Many of us have fallen ill after being infected by some virus, bacteria, or otherwise nefarious pathogen. Most of us should have received immunizations to protect us and those around us from diseases which are life-threatening but preventable. We all have immune systems, and yet the very thought of immunology makes many of us want to disapparate into thin air like Mundangus Fletcher upon seeing Lord Voldemort. Yes, precisely. It is as you feared, a not too subtle reference to J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series. But if you think about it, the immune system's components and its battles against pathogens is very similar to the adventures and ordeals of Harry Potter and his friends throughout the Harry Potter series. And if you are wondering how or why, watch the video and it will become clearer. The immune system consists of two distinct but interdependent systems, the innate immune system and the adaptive immune system, respectively. The innate immune system encompasses the barriers, the complement system, and the cells of the innate immune system. The cells of the innate immune system include the phagocytic macrophages, granulocytes, which are neutrophils, basophils, and the eosinophils, and the dendritic cells, as well as natural killer cells, which, just to confuse us, unlike all the other innate immune cells, which are myeloid progenitors, are lymphoid progenitors. The adaptive immune system, on the other hand, consists of T cells, T for thymus, and B cells, B for bone marrow, and the effector cells into which they usually turn when activated. T cells can only recognize pathogens when they have been digested and presented on the MHCs of other cells, often dendritic cells and infected cells, and sometimes macrophages and B cells. They then differentiate into cytotoxic cells, which usually have CD8 receptors and can recognize MHC class 1s, which are often presented on infected cells and whose function is to kill infected cells. Savage, I know. And CD4 receptor T cells, which recognize pathogens presented on antigen-presenting cells depending on their function, may be classified into Th1, Th2, or Th17, and T follicular. Th1 cells activate macrophages to increase their ability to kill intracellular organisms, such as TB. Th2 cells are involved in the process against parasitic organisms as well as allergic reaction, and they are responsible for recruiting eosinophils and for increasing the production of IgE by B cells. Th17 are especially important in reactions which require neutrophils because they produce cytokines which recruit and amplify the effects of neutrophils. The main difference between the innate immune system and the adaptive immune system is that the innate immune system is less specific than the adaptive immune system because it recognizes PAMPs, and the innate immune system is unable to form memory, and therefore any infection which is successfully destroyed by the innate immune system is not remembered by the immune system. The adaptive immune system, on the other hand, are more specific and they can create memory immune system. However, we still need the innate immune system because the adaptive immune system takes approximately 4 to 7 days to initiate, and during that time, viruses, bacteria, parasites could have finished with you. Additionally, as stated before, the innate immune cells are very important in initiating the effect of T cells. Now that we have introduced the key players in our immune system game, it is time to discuss the actual immune system and how it defends you and forms an inflammatory response to infection. Your internal organs are lucky because they are protected by barriers, including the respiratory airways. These barriers act both mechanically as well as chemically. Mechanically, barriers attempt to prevent the entrance of pathogens by having tight junctions which are virtually impenetrable, kind of like a fortress or the very steady walls of Hogwarts. Most pathogens cannot breach these very steady walls and require for there to be damage in order for them to establish and colonize the tissues underneath. However, some pathogens have become so specialized that they are able to use those very tight junctions to colonize these tissues and infect the cells which are beneath these tissues. Very cunning indeed. Chemically, these barriers secrete numerous substances which may kill, inactivate, or which may simply prevent pathogens from being able to adhere to the barrier cells. For example, mucus, which is secreted by the many internal barrier structures, and therefore their names mucous membranes, mucus structures. Additionally, these barriers are covered in commensals, which protect against infection by strengthening the barrier tissues, as well as by competing for nutrition and colonization sites with the pathogens. Therefore, many of these pathogens are defeated and are unable to cause an infection quite early, kind of like Quirrell. But others are so specialized that they defeat or evade these mechanisms of protection and therefore thus passes your first line of defense. You could say they are specialized in the dark arts. When these pathogens manage to evade destruction at the barriers, they may induce an initial immune response by complement. The complement system consists of 3 pathways: the classic pathway, so named because it was discovered first; the pathway, which was the pathway that was discovered next, or the other pathway, and therefore called the alternative pathway; and the lectin pathway, because I guess they ran out of things to say other. The complement system participates in the immune system in 3 ways: by initiating an inflammatory response, by killing pathogens through the use of membrane attack complexes, as well as through the marking of pathogens, thus signaling to other cells through a process called opsonization that they are foreign and need to be removed from the body. And perhaps the word opsonization is familiar to you because opsonization is also something which antibodies do as well. Now, the complement system. The complement system consists of inactive proteins, including enzymes, which when inactive are called zymogens, most of which are produced by the liver. Some of these factors are activated in the presence of pathogens. In the lectin pathway, 4 different types of pathogen recognition receptors found in blood may begin the pathway. In the classic pathway, the C1 complex detects the pathway, and in the alternate pathway, it may just spontaneously be activated. All 3 of these pathways of the complement system have a common pathway in which they end because they produce C3 convertases. These are enzymes which cleave the factor C3 to produce the product C3A and C3B. C3A helps C5A to induce inflammation, but C3B is important because it binds to the pathogen and therefore alerts the rest of the immune system that a thing which is a malevolent presence has been detected and therefore should be removed, i.e. that there is a pathogen. You know, kind of like how Dumbledore's army tried to alert the ministry that you know who had returned, and they were like, no. In other words, C3b opsonizes the pathogen for the immune cells for phagocytosis to take place. Now, C3b is also very busy because it also combines with the enzymes to cleave C5 into C5a, which is important for launching an inflammatory response, as previously stated, and C5b, which together with the factors including C6, C7, C8, and C9 is important for the formation of the membrane attack complex, which is basically the complement system drilling a hole in the membrane of the pathogens to disrupt their cellular processes and therefore killing them. Vicious, I know. C5a and C3a act on mast cells to release histamine and TNF-alpha, which increase vascular permeability. They increase vascular permeability directly and indirectly, and they also act on the amount of cell adhesion molecules by increasing these. The increase in permeability allows the extravasation of Igs or immunoglobulins and complement. C5a can also act on neutrophils and on monocytes, which are precursors to macrophages, to increase the adhesion of these cells to blood vessel walls and their migration towards the sites of immunoglobulin deposition. Thus, an inflammatory response may begin. You might know that an acute inflammatory response is characterized by rubor, calla, dulla, and tumor. In other words, that it is characterized by redness, warmth to touch, and swelling. Now, the redness, the warmth, and the swelling are all manifestations of the leaking of blood vessels and those things which leak out of them, and therefore we call this an acute inflammatory response. And in this way, immunology is related to inflammatory responses of anatomical pathology. Now, do you know how the immune system is related to the Harry Potter series? Do you? Well, whether you are decidedly a boring muggle or still waiting for your letter from the wizarding school of your choice, you must have read, seen, or heard about the Harry Potter series. Now, your question might have been, what does Harry Potter have to do with immunology? But if you think about it, the immune system and its interaction with pathogens are very similar to the many wars and battles fought in Harry Potter, as I said before. And because immunology is a relatively new field of study, everything to us seems kind of magical. So it makes sense that the battles and wars I chose would have been in a magical book. Now, if you don't think about it very deeply, you are Harry Potter. I know, congratulations, you are a wizard, Harry. And because you are Harry Potter, there are things trying to kill you. I say things because I was never quite sure what Voldemort was, but he and his band of Death Eaters are trying to kill you. So if you are Harry Potter, then the pathogens are Voldemort and his band of Death Eaters. The memory cells, which have encountered the pathogen before and which initiate and augment immune responses against the pathogen on second encounter, are Dumbledore. Commensal bacteria, which would kill you if given the opportunity, but mostly protect you against other pathogens, are Severus Snape. Although I doubt the commensals are protecting you because you have your mother's eyes. Now, the hardworking macrophages are McGonagall. She gets a special mention because she is awesome. And they are responsible for being scavenger cells, helping induce inflammation, and for being phagocytes. And I think your macrophages are happy when you treat your body well and thus sass any umbrages around. The rest of the innate immune system are the Order of the Phoenix and later Dumbledore's army. And finally, the innocent cells, which are infected and killed as a result of being Infected are any innocents who died in the series. They are Dobby, if you like, Cedric, if you like, or anyone else for whom you cried when you read the series. And like the beloved characters in these books and movies, the immune system is not perfect, and sometimes it may overreact, and you would develop an autoimmune disease. Now, is it clear why your immune system is kind of like Harry Potter? I mean, if you don't look too deeply into it and don't explore it too deeply. Well, I hope this has been helpful. Thank you very much for listening to our video. Bye! Many of us have fallen ill after being infected by some virus,